there, this brief screencast will introduce you to the company description. This is an assignment that includes some formal writing, and you'll be composing in a business letter format, and I will touch on that in a moment. But first of all, I want to kind of show you what exactly you're doing, sort of like what component of the business plan it is that you're working on right now. So the company description is a part of the larger business plan that's outlined by the SBA, so that Small Business Association website we've been following. And as you know, if you scroll down, you'll see information about the traditional business plan and the lean startup plan, and you've already done the lean startup plan. But then what follows are some paragraphs that tell you about different components of the traditional business plan format, and you will end up doing most of these as individual assignments throughout the semester, and then at the end of the semester you'll do the whole thing, but you'll already have drafted and gotten feedback on most of it. So but what I want to draw your attention to here is the company description. So please note that the company description itself is one section in the larger group of sections in the traditional business plan format. So for the company description assignment, you are not writing everything. So you're not doing the executive summary, you're not doing a market analysis, describing organization and management, product line. You're not doing any of that. You're just addressing the company description. And I have actually copied and pasted this paragraph or these two paragraphs into the assignment instructions. So I'm going to go back to the assignment instructions, but I wanted to show you kind of what this is coming from and what piece of the larger traditional business plan it is, because this assignment does not involve completing a traditional business plan. It's much smaller than that. And that allows you to go into more detail in the specific parts. And that's why we're breaking down the traditional business plan throughout the term. So for this assignment, you are going to really think about what is your company? Who is it? What does it do? And so there are two sets of questions in the assignment instructions. So be sure that you address both of them. The paragraph from the SBA, which is what we're looking at right here, asks some kind of big idea, big picture questions about your company, and it's an opportunity for you to think holistically about your company. Then you'll find in the writing portion of the instructions that I've also given you some very specific questions to answer. And these are questions that you might not think about as you're doing that holistic thinking. So I've provided the breakdown here as well. For example, you'll need to define your business. What is it? Where will it be located? Who's your target consumer? So a lot of you will probably be making local businesses, but not everybody makes that choice. So it's very important that your audience knows where the heck this company is that you're talking about. Next, you'll need to define some terms. So and not everybody's going to do a restaurant, but this is a really concrete example that you can think about. So if you say restaurant, do you mean something like Olive Garden or McDonald's or like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or something? You know, restaurant has a lot of different types. So you want to make sure that you define your terms for your audience. The company description is your opportunity to communicate what your company is to someone who doesn't know what your company is. And you can't assume that they have a lot of insight or knowledge about it. So as with most business writing, this is an assignment where it's really important to avoid jargon and lingo unless you define it. If the jargon or lingo is important to your business, then you can use it, but you absolutely have to define it. Okay, next up, your value or evaluation. So what is your product or business value? Why would consumers want your product? What is it that you're offering? Why would people want what you're offering? So this kind of gives you a chance to think about what's the demand for your product? What need does it meet? Next, you'll want to address cause and effect. So would your business change anything? If so, what would it change and how? So maybe you are in some kind of service business. That's a really easy thing to explain how you're going to change things for your customer. If you're offering a product, then you might think about how this product could change things for your customer. How might it improve their lives, that sort of thing. So you want to make clear what kind of impact your company will have, because you're pitching this company to an investor in this letter. And I will talk more about audience in just a moment. But so think about you're trying to kind of prove that your company will do something and that there is some kind of need. So the cause and effect really kind of grows nicely out of the value evaluation. So you've explained like why your business has value, and it has value because it's going to make, whatever change it's going to make. And then finally, you might want to include something about your mission statement. You also might want to include what you want from your investors. So this is a nice moment to kind of talk about audience a little bit. So I mentioned, let's see. Yeah, I mentioned here in the writing section that I am grading this assignment from the perspective that you've asked me to invest in your business. And so your audience is potential investors. You don't have to address it personally to me. You could address it to multiple investors or to, someone else, an imaginary person or someone as an investor. But just know that my perspective as a reader will be like, okay, well, this person has asked me to invest in their company. Do they seem to know what they're talking about? Have they done any research? Does it seem viable in some way? So it's useful at the end to be clear what you want from your investors. And as we've talked about when we talked about some of the smaller assignments like requesting a meeting or even the job emails or whatever, you don't have to ask for everything in early communication and initial communication. Maybe you're just asking for a meeting to talk about the benefit to the investor in investing in the company. But you do want some kind of call to action at the end. So what is it you want your reader to do with the information that you just gave them? So you don't want to just conclude and be like, so now you know about my company, because then your reader doesn't know what they're supposed to do with that information. Always give a call to action at the end. What should the reader do after they finish reading your letter? So oftentimes it's, get back in touch with you or schedule a call with you, something like that. But they need to know what to do with it. So that's what we call the call to action. The other thing that you could include is your mission statement. And maybe you've already been thinking about this. We've talked a good bit about company culture, and you might have already sort of been formulating, what your company is all about, what they stand for, to the point that you might want to draft a mission statement to include in your company description. The mission statement is optional. The call to action is not optional. So these can kind of go hand in hand. If you have a business that you feel like it's going to make a really big impact in your community, then it might make a lot of sense to combine your mission statement with the call to action. Like, can you help us reduce poverty in our community today, kind of thing, if you're doing some kind of social service company. Or can you help make consumers' lives better today, kind of thing, if you're creating a product that you think is going to help people's lives. So anyway, this last section is very much about connecting with your investors. So this is a section where you might bring in some pathos, try to make that emotional connection with your investor. Okay, so we've talked about what needs to go in there, the specifics. These are the specific questions you need to answer. These are the holistic ideas you need to think about. So and most of them are touched on in those specific questions, but the problems your business solves, who are your consumers, who will you serve, what are the competitive advantages of your company? So why would people be customers for your company rather than a competitor? So it's worth thinking about. What are businesses sort of like yours? Like, where would your customers be coming from? Who would you be competing with? And it's okay if it's not the exact same company or type of company, but you do need to have a sense of who your competitors are so that you can make clear how your company is different from those competitors and why your company has an advantage over those competitors. You might also think about experts on your team or a great location or something about that. So, as the description from the SBA says, this is a place to boast about your strengths. Now, some of this information you will already have talked about in the Lean Startup Plan that you completed. So, value propositions, key resources, those are things that would be like your strengths and then like what you offer the customer. So definitely have a look back at your Lean Startup Plan and see what content of that might help out with your company description. So basically, if you are a big picture person, you might want to start with the holistic section and think about these questions to get started and get drafting. Whereas if you're a detail person, you might want to start with these very specific questions and then move to the big picture one. So it's worth thinking about what feels easier to you and start there. Now, in terms of design, you're going to use the business letter format for this document. So throughout the term, we're trying to practice different document styles. And so this is an opportunity to try out the business letter format. And in our readings from week 1, we have some samples of the business letter format. And then in our textbook as well, section 9.2 has a description of letters and kind of the type of content they have. And then it also has a breakdown of the elements of a business letter. So I do expect you to have all of the elements of a business letter. However, you'll see that some of them are optional and some of them don't apply to what you're doing. So do use your judgment on this. It's 15 elements, but it won't look like 15 different things. For example, the return address and the date, those are all going to be together. A subject line, like in an email, that should be there. But you're not mailing it, you're not certifying it or anything, so you can omit number 4. It doesn't need to be personal or confidential, so you can omit number 5. So anyway, use your judgment here as you're reading through these sections, figure out what you need to include. 6 through 10 are about the content of the letter, so I encourage you to read these guidelines carefully as you are revising your letter. And then for the signature, you don't have to do a kind of handwritten signature. If you have one on your computer, that's fine, but a typed name is fine. And then, yeah, like number 12, nobody else is preparing it, so you'll omit that. You're not including any attachments, or maybe you are. I mean, this is your imaginary business, so, but most of the time I don't see any inclusions, and so you would omit number 13. You're probably not copying it to anyone else. You can omit that. You do want your contact information. You might not have a logo, but anyway, so you can see how even though it says it's 15 pieces and elements of a business letter, most of them kind of work together and you'll omit some of them. So it ends up looking much more normal than it might sound like. So this is the example in the textbook of a business letter. And you can see that they put the labels with everything. You won't have all those, and so yours won't be quite that spaced out like at the top and the bottom here. And do note in the description of business letters in our textbook, it does mention that business letters should be 1 to 2 pages. So don't go over that length. Most company descriptions that I receive are about 1 page. So it doesn't have to be super long. And that's the company description assignment. Don't forget to have a look at the rubric that's attached to the assignment to see how I will evaluate your submission. So as usual, I'm evaluating the content of what you've written, the writing, so that includes style and proofreading, and then the design. So make sure that you are putting that in business letter format. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me on Yellowdig and don't forget to tag me. Thanks.